What happens when the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, with technology that bends reality itself, spend millions of credits and years of research on a problem that threatens all life, only to watch a single human solve it in under an hour with nothing but scrap metal and stubborn determination? This is the story of the Zarian Crisis, where 13 alien species pooled their greatest minds and most sophisticated technology to prevent galactic extinction. They built quantum computers the size of moons, deployed AI systems that could calculate the movement of every atom in a star system, and created mathematical models so complex they required their own pocket dimensions to run. They failed. Then came Sarah Chen, a maintenance engineer from a backwater human colony, armed with nothing but a broken multi-tool, a caffeine addiction, and the kind of problem-solving approach that makes the rest of the galaxy simultaneously terrified and amazed by humanity. Because sometimes the most elegant solution isn't the most complex one. Sometimes it just takes a human to look at an impossible problem and say, "Hold my coffee." The emergency beacon that pierced through hyperspace carried a simple message that chilled every civilized world in the galaxy. Zarian Prime is dying. All life in Sector 7 will follow within 48 standard cycles. Dr. Kethvar of the Altarian Science Council stood before the massive holographic display in the Emergency Command Center on Nexus Station, watching the real-time feed from the doomed system. Zarian Prime, once a brilliant blue star that had nurtured 17 inhabited worlds for over 1 billion years, now pulsed with an angry red glow. Massive solar flares erupted from its surface every few minutes, each one powerful enough to sterilize a planet. Status report. Kethvar's voice carried the weight of 13 different species' hopes as representatives from across the Galactic Alliance crowded around the display. Commander Sixel, the insectoid military liaison, clicked her mandibles nervously. The star's magnetic field is collapsing. Whatever is happening down there, it's accelerating exponentially. At current progression rates, Zarian Prime will go supernova in 47 hours, 23 minutes. 17 worlds, whispered Ambassador Veltar from the Aquatic Depths Consortium. 400 billion souls. The scope of the disaster was almost incomprehensible. Zarian Sector wasn't just any system, it was the cultural and economic heart of 3 major civilizations. The loss would send shockwaves through the galaxy that could trigger wars, collapse trade routes, and destabilize dozens of other systems. "What about evacuation?" asked Dr. Peace Singh, the human representative. As usual, she was the only one present who didn't dwarf everyone else in the room. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years, and most species still saw them as the new kids who asked too many questions. Impossible, Zixhel's antennae drooped. Even with every ship in the sector, we could maybe evacuate 2% of the population. The logistics alone, Dr. Fiend Chester. Kethvar pulled up another display showing their current resources. "We have assembled the greatest scientific minds from 13 species. Our combined computing power includes quantum arrays from Altair, probability engines from the Collective, and dimensional processors from the Arch Civilization. The total processing capability exceeds anything ever assembled in galactic history." "And our budget?" asked Minister Kardash, the rock-like representative from the mineral worlds. "Unlimited," Kethvar replied grimly. "The Galactic Emergency Fund has been activated. We have access to 847 million credits, plus unlimited requisitioning authority for any technology or personnel needed." Dr. Singh raised her hand tentatively. "Has anyone figured out what's actually causing the magnetic field collapse? I mean, stars don't just decide to blow up randomly." Several aliens exchanged glances. The humans' directness could be refreshing, but it also highlighted uncomfortable gaps in their knowledge. "Our initial scans detected massive gravitational anomalies near the star's core," explained Dr. Nithros, the energy-being scientist whose form flickered like contained lightning. "Something is disrupting the star's natural fusion processes. Something artificial," added Commander Zixhel. We've confirmed the presence of unknown technology deep within Zirion Prime's photosphere. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't a natural disaster. Someone or something had weaponized a star. Have we identified the technology's origin? Dr. Singh asked. Kethvar manipulated the holographic display, zooming in to show a series of crystalline structures floating impossibly within the star's outer atmosphere. Negative. The technology doesn't match any known civilization's signature. It appears to be ancient. How ancient? Singh pressed. Possibly pre-galactic. We're talking about artifacts that could predate our entire recorded history by millions of years. Dr. Singh stared at the structures, her brow furrowed in concentration. And these things are somehow disrupting stellar fusion? The preliminary data suggests they're creating microscopic artificial black holes. Dr. Nithros explained, his energy form pulsing with frustration. Each structure appears to be a gravitational manipulation device of unprecedented sophistication. When activated together, they're destabilizing the star's magnetic containment field. So we need to either destroy them or deactivate them, Singh said simply. If only it were that simple. Kethvar activated another display showing their failed attempts. We've already tried everything. Quantum torpedoes, antimatter charges, dimensional disruptors. Nothing has even scratched these artifacts. They seem to exist in a state of quantum flux that makes them effectively invulnerable to conventional attacks. Over the next several hours, the assembled teams worked frantically. The Altarian quantum computers ran millions of simulations, trying to model the artifact's behavior patterns. The collective's probability engines calculated potential intervention strategies with success rates measured in decimal fractions of percentages. The arch-dimensional processors attempted to map the artifact's extra-dimensional properties. Every few hours, Kethvar would call for status reports, and the response was always the same. Marginal progress, no breakthrough. Dr. Nithros, report on the energy nullification approach. We've designed a quantum field generator that could theoretically disrupt the artifact's power source. Unfortunately, it would require a delivery system capable of surviving temperatures exceeding 50 million degrees Kelvin while maintaining quantum coherence. Our best estimates suggest a 97% failure rate. Commander Zixhel, military options? We've positioned a fleet of dreadnoughts armed with the latest reality-warping weapons. However, simulations indicate that any attack powerful enough to affect the artifacts would likely trigger an immediate supernova event. Minister Kardesh, Industrial Solutions? My people have designed a massive electromagnetic containment field that could potentially reinforce the star's magnetic structure. The energy requirements alone would drain the power grids of 40 systems, and we'd need at least 72 hours to construct it. Time they didn't have. As the crisis entered its 20th hour, frustration was beginning to show even among the most disciplined alien representatives. Dr. Trust Teddy Singh noticed that several species had started exhibiting stress behaviors. The Altarian's fur was changing color. The collective representatives were humming in increasingly discordant harmonics, and Commander Zixhel had begun grooming her antennae obsessively. Maybe we're overthinking this, Singh said during a brief pause in the technical briefings. The room turned to look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed irritation. I mean, she continued, undaunted by the attention, we're treating these artifacts like they're some kind of unsolvable puzzle. But what if they're just machines? Old machines, sure, but machines nonetheless. Doctor. Kethvar's tail twitched, a sign of impatience among his species. Dr. Singh, these artifacts are utilizing technology beyond our current understanding. They exist in quantum superposition states that our most advanced theoretical frameworks can barely describe. Right, but they're still doing something specific, aren't they? They're creating artificial black holes to disrupt stellar fusion. That's not magic. That's engineering. Really good engineering, but still engineering. Your point being? Asked Dr. Nithros. his energy form flickering more rapidly. My point is that every machine has an off switch, or at least a way to break it if you hit it in the right place. Several aliens made sounds that their respective species used to indicate polite skepticism. Commander Zixhel's mandibles clicked. Dr. Singh, we've already established that these artifacts are impervious to our most powerful weapons. But have we tried hitting them with something they're not expecting? Such as... Singh shrugged. I don't know yet. But maybe instead of trying to understand how they work, we should focus on finding their weak spots. Every system has failure points. An admirable sentiment, Kethvar said with a diplomatic tone he used when humoring the humans. However, given our time constraints and the stakes involved, we must focus our efforts on the most scientifically sound approaches. Singh nodded and settled back in her chair, but her mind was clearly still working. She pulled out a small tablet and began making notes, occasionally glancing up at the holographic displays showing the mysterious artifacts. As the hours wore on, the sophisticated alien technologies continued to fail. The quantum computers generated increasingly complex models that offered no practical solutions. The probability engines calculated millions of scenarios, none with acceptable success rates. The dimensional processors mapped 17 different extra-dimensional aspects of the artifacts without finding any exploitable weaknesses. When meanwhile the countdown continued. 40 hours. 35 hours. 30 hours. The stress in the command center was becoming palpable. Several delegates had begun making preparations for the evacuation of their homeworlds, despite the fact that the disaster would spread far beyond the immediate Zirian sector. We're missing something fundamental, Dr. Nithros announced during the latest briefing. These artifacts operate on principles that seem to violate several established laws of physics. It's as if their creators had access to forces we haven't even discovered yet. Or, Dr. Singh interjected quietly, maybe they just found a different way to use forces we already understand. This time, fewer aliens bothered to look at her with skepticism. Desperation was beginning to override scientific pride. Explain, Kethvar said simply. Well, you said these things create artificial black holes, right? But black holes are basically just mass collapsed into a tiny space. What if instead of trying to destroy the artifacts, we found a way to, I don't know, redistribute the mass they're manipulating? The gravitational forces involved would require, Dr. Nithros began. Would require something we haven't thought of yet, Singh finished. Look, I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm saying maybe the answer doesn't require rewriting physics textbooks. As the 25th hour of the crisis arrived, bringing them perilously close to the point of no return, an unexpected development occurred. A small courier ship requested permission to dock with Nexus Station. Who the hell is requesting docking clearance at a time like this? Commander Zixhel demanded. The communications officer, a young Altarian named Kethopal, checked his display nervously. It's a maintenance vessel from the human colony on Proxima 7. One person aboard requesting permission to observe our operations. Absolutely not. Zixhel's mandibles snapped shut. We don't have time for tourists. Actually, Dr. Singh said, sitting up straighter. Who is it? Kethpol consulted his screen again. Someone named Sarah Chen. She claims to be a systems maintenance specialist. Dr. Singh's face broke into the first smile anyone had seen in the command center for hours. Oh, you have got to let her dock. Why? Asked Kethvar. Because Sarah Chen is the woman who fixed the impossible problem with the Proxima 7 fusion reactor last year. The one that had 20 of our best engineers stumped for 6 months. And how long did it take her? Asked Dr. Nithros, his form stabilizing with curiosity. Dr. Singh's smile widened. 43 minutes. 20 minutes later, Sarah Chen walked into the most advanced scientific command center in galactic history, wearing a coffee-stained jumpsuit and carrying a toolkit that looked like it had survived several small wars. Sarah Chen stood in the doorway of the command center, taking in the scene with the practiced eye of someone who had spent 20 years fixing things that other people swore couldn't be fixed. The massive holographic displays showed data streams that would have given most beings a headache, but Sarah's attention was focused on something else entirely: the body language of the assembled aliens. She'd learned to read stress patterns in different species during her years maintaining multi-species facilities. The Altarian's fur was shifting through rapid color changes, indicating high anxiety. The insectoid commander was grooming her antennae obsessively, a classic displacement behavior. The energy being was flickering at a frequency that suggested critical overload. Dr. Singh? Sarah nodded to the human representative, then looked around the room. Mind if I get caught up to speed? The next 30 minutes were a whirlwind of technical briefings, holographic demonstrations, and increasingly complex explanations of quantum mechanics, stellar physics, and gravitational manipulation. With trust, Teddy, Sarah listened intently, occasionally asking questions that made several alien scientists exchange glances. "So let me get this straight," Sarah said when the briefings concluded. "You've got some ancient widgets floating in a star. They're making tiny black holes that are messing with the star's magnetic field, and if you don't stop them in about 20 hours, the star explodes and takes out half the sector. That is an extremely simplified but technically accurate summary," Dr. Kethvar admitted. "And you've tried hitting them with every fancy weapon you've got, running them through computers that are smarter than most civilizations, and building machines that cost more than some planets." "Correct," Sarah nodded slowly. "Can I see the maintenance logs?" The room fell silent. Commander Zixhel's antennae stopped moving entirely. "The what?" "Maintenance logs. Service records. Operational documentation. You know, the paperwork that shows how these things are supposed to work." Dr. Nithros's energy form pulsed with confusion. "These artifacts are millions of years old. Any operational documentation would have been lost to time eons ago." "Maybe," Sarah said, pulling out her tablet and connecting it to the command center's data network. "But let me see what you've actually scanned so far." For the next hour, Sarah pored over the technical data with a focus that impressed even the alien scientists. She wasn't looking at the quantum equations or dimensional matrices. Instead, she was studying the raw structural scans, power distribution patterns, and physical composition analysis. "Interesting," she murmured, zooming in on a particular section of the artifact schematics. "What have you found?" asked Dr. Singh. "Well, first off, these things aren't as alien as you think they are." Sarah highlighted several structural elements on her display. "Look at this. See these geometric patterns? The way the power conduits are arranged? The distribution of load-bearing elements?" The assembled scientists leaned in to study her annotations. "This is basic engineering," Sarah continued. "Really, really good basic engineering, but still basic engineering. Whoever built these things understood the same fundamental principles we do. They just had better materials and more time to perfect the design." "But the quantum superposition states," Dr. Nithros began, "are probably just a really clever way to handle thermal stress," Sarah interrupted. "Think about it. These artifacts are sitting inside a star. The temperature variations alone would tear apart any normal structure. But if you could shift parts of your machine in and out of phase with reality, you could dissipate heat in directions that don't technically exist." Commander Zixhel's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "An elegant solution to an engineering problem." "Exactly. Which brings me to the second thing I noticed." Sarah called up another display showing power distribution patterns. "These artifacts aren't weapons." The room erupted in confused chatter from a dozen different species. "But they're destabilizing the star," protested Minister Kardesh. "They're running a program that's destabilizing the star," Sarah corrected. "But look at their design. They're not built to destroy. They're built to regulate. See these feedback loops? The harmonic dampeners? The distributed processing nodes? These are maintenance systems." Dr. Sip Kethvar's tail began twitching rapidly. "Maintenance systems? Stellar maintenance systems. These artifacts were built to keep stars stable, not destroy them. Something has gone wrong with their programming. The implications hit the room like a shockwave. If Sarah was right, they weren't dealing with ancient weapons. They were dealing with ancient infrastructure that had malfunctioned. But if they're maintenance systems, Dr. Singh asked, why are they creating black holes? Sarah pulled up another schematic. Because that's probably how they're supposed to work. Think about it. A star is basically a giant fusion reactor balanced between gravity trying to crush it and radiation pressure trying to blow it apart. If you wanted to fine-tune that balance, creating temporary gravitational anomalies would actually be a pretty smart approach. Temporary being the key word, Dr. Nithros observed. Right. I think what's happened is that these systems have been running without supervision for millions of years. They've probably been making tiny adjustments to keep Sarian Prime stable all this time, but something has caused them to get stuck in a feedback loop. Commander Sixel leaned forward. What kind of something? Sarah shrugged. Could be anything. Cosmic radiation degrading their processors. Accumulated quantum errors in their memory systems. Maybe they just hit the equivalent of a software bug that's been building up for a few million years. So, how do we fix it? Asked Minister Kardesh. Well, that's where it gets interesting. Sarah called up a new display showing the artifact's communication arrays. Because these things are definitely designed to receive external commands. See these quantum entanglement transmitters? They're still functional, but they're not receiving any input signals. You mean there should be a control system? Dr. Kethvar asked. Has to be. Systems this complex don't run autonomously for millions of years without some kind of oversight. There should be a master control station somewhere. We've scanned the entire Zirian system, Commander Zixhal protested, multiple times with the most advanced sensors in the galaxy. There's no sign of any other ancient technology. Sarah looked at the scan results for several minutes, then started laughing. Not the polite chuckle that humans sometimes used in diplomatic situations, but genuine, delighted laughter. "Oh, this is beautiful," she said, wiping her eyes. "You guys are looking for the wrong thing." "Explain," Dr. Kethbar said with forced patience. "You're looking for ancient technology, right? Something that looks like these artifacts, crystalline structures, exotic materials, quantum phase shifts." Naturally. But what if the control system is designed to be invisible? What if it's been hiding in plain sight for millions of years, looking like something completely natural? Sarah manipulated the holographic display, calling up astronomical data for the Zirian system. She highlighted one particular object, a small, unremarkable moon orbiting Zirian 7. Zirian 7-8. A small rocky moon, no atmosphere, no significant geological activity. According to your scans, it's composed of ordinary silicate rock with trace metal deposits. Estimated age, 4.2 billion years, consistent with the formation of the Zirion system. "What about it?" asked Dr. Singh. Sarah grinned. "It's in a perfectly circular orbit." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. In a system with 17 planets and hundreds of moons, natural orbits were elliptical, irregular, influenced by gravitational perturbations from other bodies. Perfect circles didn't exist in nature. Furthermore, Sarah continued, its orbital period is exactly synchronized with the rotation rate of Zirian Prime. Not approximately, exactly, to 14 decimal places. Dr. Nithros's energy form began pulsing rapidly. "The statistical probability of such orbital precision occurring naturally is effectively zero," Sarah finished. "That moon isn't a moon. It's the control station, camouflaged, to look like a natural satellite." Within an hour, a hastily assembled fleet was racing toward Zirian 7C. Sarah had insisted on joining the boarding party despite protests from Commander Zixel about the dangers of exposing a civilian to unknown alien technology. "With respect, Commander," Sarah had replied, "if this thing is what I think it is, you're going to need someone who understands maintenance protocols." The approach to Zirian 7th was tense. Long-range scans confirmed Sarah's suspicions. Beneath the natural rock surface, the moon was riddled with structures that defied easy categorization. The technology was so advanced it barely registered on their instruments. "Landing bay located," reported the shuttle pilot, a nervous young Altairian. "Though I use the term landing bay loosely. It's more like the rock just opened up." The interior of the artificial moon was a marvel of engineering that left even the experienced alien scientists speechless. Vast chambers stretched beyond the range of their lights, filled with machinery that hummed with barely restrained power. The architecture was organic yet clearly artificial, as if the builders had grown their technology rather than constructed it. "Life support systems are active," Dr. Singh reported, checking her scanner. "Atmosphere is breathable for most species represented here. Gravity is exactly one standard. Temperature control, lighting, even what appears to be a water recycling system," added Dr. Temperature. "Steady. Nithros. This facility has been maintaining itself for millions of years." Sarah was examining what appeared to be a control interface embedded in the wall. Unlike the exotic crystal matrices they'd seen on the stellar artifacts, this was clearly designed for organic users. There were manipulation surfaces at various heights, tactile feedback systems, and what looked like holographic displays. "I think I found the main control room," she called out. The chamber she'd discovered was clearly the facility's nerve center. Holographic displays showed real-time data from thousands of monitoring stations throughout the Zirian system. Star charts, orbital mechanics, fusion reaction rates, magnetic field fluctuations. Everything needed to maintain stellar stability across 17 worlds. "It's incredible," whispered Dr. Kethvar. "This system has been monitoring and adjusting Zirian Prime's output for millions of years. Minor corrections to prevent solar flares, adjustments to maintain planetary climates, even modifications to the star's rotation to optimize its magnetic field." Sarah was studying the main control interface. Her brow furrowed in concentration. "And here's our problem." She pointed to a section of the display that was flashing with warning indicators. The alien text was indecipherable, but the meaning was clear from context. Something was wrong. "The system is trying to run a shutdown sequence," Sarah explained, "but it's caught in an error loop. See these commands here? It's trying to perform a controlled stellar adjustment, but the protocols are corrupted."
"Corrupted how?" asked Dr. Singh.
Sarah traced her finger along a series of diagnostic readouts. "Near as I can tell, about 3 million years ago, this system received some kind of massive electromagnetic pulse, probably from a nearby supernova or gamma-ray burst. It damaged the memory cores that contain the shutdown procedures. So the maintenance artifacts are stuck in an endless loop," Dr. Nithros observed. "They're trying to follow a program that no longer makes sense." "Exactly. And each cycle, the errors compound. What started as minor glitches have built up over millions of years into critical system failures." Commander Zixhel's mandibles were clicking rapidly, her species equivalent of nervous laughter. "So we need to fix a computer program that's been broken for 3 million years, running on technology we don't understand, in a language we can't read, with a nuclear bomb counting down outside." Sarah looked at the interface for a long moment, then reached into her toolkit and pulled out what appeared to be a standard multi-tool. "Actually," she said, "I think I can do better than that." With practiced efficiency, she began removing access panels from the control console, revealing the ancient equivalent of circuit boards beneath. The technology was incredibly advanced, but the basic principles were recognizable: data pathways, processing nodes. "Sarah," Dr. Singh said nervously, "are you sure you should be dismantling alien technology that's millions of years old?" "I'm not dismantling it," Sarah replied, carefully disconnecting what appeared to be a primary data conduit. "I'm performing emergency maintenance." She pulled a small device from her toolkit, a standard diagnostic scanner that probably cost less than the lunch budget for this mission. With careful precision, she connected it to the alien data conduit. "The beautiful thing about engineering," Sarah said as she worked, "is that certain principles are universal. Redundancy, error checking, fail-safe protocols. Any system designed to operate for millions of years has to have backup procedures. Her scanner beeped softly, displaying readouts that made the assembled scientists lean in closer. "There we go," Sarah said with satisfaction. "Emergency reset protocol. Every system has one, a way to bypass normal operations and restore basic functionality when everything else goes wrong." "You found a factory reset?" Dr. Kethvar asked incredulously. "More like a safe mode," Sarah replied. "It'll shut down the malfunctioning stellar adjustment program and restore the artifacts to basic standby mode." She looked around at the assembled aliens, all of whom were staring at her with expressions ranging from amazement to horror. "The only catch is that someone needs to manually confirm the reset command. These systems are way too smart to perform critical operations without organic authorization." "How do we do that?" asked Dr. Singh. Sarah pointed to a simple interface panel near the main console, a single button surrounded by what appeared to be biometric scanners. Someone just needs to press that button and provide a genetic sample for authorization. Any organic intelligence should work. The system isn't species-specific. The assembled group looked at the button, then at each other, then at the countdown timer that showed they had less than 18 hours before Zirian Prime went supernova. "I'll do it," Dr. Singh said, stepping forward. "Wait." Commander Zixel held up one chitinous hand. "What if this triggers something worse? What if we're missing something critical?" Sarah shrugged. "Then 17 worlds get destroyed, and it's my fault instead of an ancient computer glitch. But honestly, the system has been trying to run this reset for 3 million years. I think it really wants us to press that button." Dr. Singh looked around the room one more time, taking in the faces of her colleagues. Some uncertain, some hopeful, all running out of options. "Well," she said, placing her hand on the biometric scanner, "when you put it that way." The moment Dr. Singh's hand made contact with the biometric scanner, the entire control room transformed. What had been a chamber filled with flashing warning lights and discordant alarm tones suddenly became a symphony of organized activity. The holographic displays shifted from chaotic error messages to orderly status reports, and a sound that could only be described as a cosmic sigh of relief echoed through the ancient facility. "Genetic pattern confirmed," announced a voice that seemed to speak directly into their minds, communicating meaning rather than words. "Organic authorization acknowledged." Initiating emergency restoration protocol. Sarah watched her diagnostic scanner with growing excitement as data streams flowed past at incredible rates. "It's working! The system is running a complete diagnostic of all stellar maintenance artifacts and reverting them to baseline operational parameters." Through the facility's viewports, they could see immediate changes in Zirian Prime's behavior. The angry red pulsing that had characterized the star for the past day was already beginning to stabilize, shifting toward a more natural golden hue. "Stellar magnetic field stabilization in progress." The facility's voice continued. "Estimated time to complete restoration, 47 minutes, 32 seconds. Commander Zixel's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was the insectoid equivalent of nervous laughter. 47 minutes. "We've been working on this problem for 25 hours with the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy, and this human solves it in 47 minutes. "To be fair," Sarah said, still monitoring the system diagnostics, "I had an advantage. You were trying to understand technology that was millions of years beyond your current capabilities. I just treated it like any other broken machine." Dr. Kethvar's fur was slowly returning to its normal color as stress hormones left his system. "But how did you know the reset protocol would work? How could you be certain that pressing that button wouldn't make things worse?" Sarah looked up from her scanner and grinned. "I couldn't. But here's the thing about maintenance work. Sometimes you reach a point where the risk of doing nothing is greater than the risk of trying something new. We had 18 hours before certain destruction. Even if my approach had a 90% chance of failure, it was still better odds than sitting around running more calculations. You gambled the lives of 400 billion beings on a 10% chance? Dr. Nithros's energy form flickered with what might have been admiration or horror. I gambled them on professional experience and engineering intuition, Sarah corrected. Plus, these systems really wanted to run that reset. Look at this diagnostic data. The facility has been trying to execute emergency protocols for 3 million years. Every calculation, every adjustment, every attempted repair has been building toward this moment. The facility's voice interrupted their conversation. Restoration protocol proceeding normally. Stellar magnetic field coherence has improved by 43%. All maintenance artifacts are responding to corrective commands. Through the viewports, Zirian Prime was visibly returning to normal. The massive solar flares had ceased entirely, and the star's surface was settling into the regular patterns that had nurtured 17 worlds for over 1 billion years. I have a question, Singh said, studying the facility's displays. If this system has been maintaining Zirian Prime for millions of years, why hasn't anyone noticed? I mean, stellar maintenance on this scale should have left some kind of evidence. Sarah brought up a historical data archive on one of the holographic displays. Actually, I think people have noticed. Look at this. Records from every major civilization that has studied Zirian Prime. They all comment on how unusually stable the star is. No significant solar variability, no irregular radiation patterns, no unexpected changes in luminosity. They attributed it to natural stellar characteristics, Dr. Kethvar observed. Because that's what they wanted to see, Sarah replied. When you find a star that behaves exactly the way your theories predict it should, you don't start looking for hidden maintenance systems. You congratulate yourself on understanding astrophysics. Commander Zixel was examining what appeared to be a galactic map displayed on one of the larger interfaces. This is fascinating. The facility is showing maintenance schedules for hundreds of other star systems throughout the galaxy. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled group. If Zirian Prime wasn't unique, if there were similar maintenance systems throughout the galaxy, it suggested the existence of an ancient civilization whose engineering prowess dwarfed anything currently known. How many systems? Asked Dr. Nithros. According to this map, at least 3,000. Commander Zixel replied, distributed across the entire galactic spiral arm, all showing similar technological signatures. Sarah was accessing another data archive, her expression growing more amazed by the minute. And it looks like they've all been running autonomously for millions of years. This isn't just stellar maintenance, it's galactic infrastructure. The implications were staggering. For millions of years, an ancient maintenance network had been quietly ensuring stellar stability across a significant portion of the galaxy. Civilizations had risen and fallen, wars had been fought, empires had expanded and collapsed, all while invisible caretakers worked tirelessly to maintain the fundamental conditions necessary for life. Stellar field restoration complete, announced the facility's voice. All maintenance artifacts have returned to standard operational parameters. Zirian Prime is now operating within normal parameters for expected stellar lifetime of 4,700,000,000 additional years. Through the viewports, Zirian Prime looked exactly as it had before the crisis, a stable, life-giving star that showed no signs of the catastrophic instability that had threatened to destroy half the sector. Saved by a human with a multi-tool and 47 minutes to spare, added Dr. Singh. As the immediate crisis passed, the assembled scientists found themselves grappling with questions that would reshape their understanding of galactic history. Who had built this network? Where had they gone? Why had they created a system to maintain stellar stability across such a vast region of space? The historical archives are extensive, Sarah reported, still exploring the facility's databases. But most of it is operational data, maintenance logs, performance reports, diagnostic information. It's like finding the service records for a machine without finding the manual. Any indication of who built all this? Asked Dr. Preston. Kethvar. Sarah shook her head. Nothing direct, But based on the operational timeline, this network has been running for approximately 4.7 million years. Whoever built it either left the galaxy or she trailed off, not wanting to voice the obvious alternative. Or they're extinct, Dr. Suit. Nithros finished. The thought sobered everyone present. A civilization capable of engineering on this scale, one that had taken responsibility for maintaining stellar stability across thousands of systems, had somehow vanished, leaving only their machines to carry on their work. There is one other thing, Sarah said hesitantly. The facility has been trying to communicate something beyond just the emergency reset. It's been attempting to send messages to, well, I'm not entirely sure. She pulled up another interface showing what appeared to be a communications array. Unlike the maintenance systems, this equipment showed clear signs of recent activity, transmission logs, signal routing protocols, even what looked like error reports for failed message delivery. It's trying to contact someone, Dr. Singh observed. Multiple someones, actually, Sarah corrected. Look at this transmission log. The facility has been sending regular status reports to over 200 different destinations throughout the galaxy. It's been doing this for millions of years, but none of the messages are getting through anymore. Commander Zixel leaned closer to study the data. The transmission destinations. Are they other maintenance facilities? Some of them, yes, but others. Sarah highlighted several entries in the log. These coordinates don't match any known star systems. They're pointed at regions of space that appear to be empty. The implications sent a chill through the assembled group. The network wasn't just maintaining stellar stability, it was apparently waiting for instructions from builders who might no longer exist. So what happens now? Asked Minister Kardash. Do we just leave everything running as it was? Sarah looked around the facility, taking in the incredible technology that continued to hum with quiet efficiency. I think that's exactly what we do. This system has been maintaining stellar stability for millions of years without any problems. The only issue was the corrupted reset protocol, and we fixed that. But surely we should study this technology, Dr. Bin. Nithros protested. The scientific implications alone are way beyond what any of us are qualified to handle, Sarah interrupted. Look, I'm good at fixing broken machines, but this isn't broken anymore. It's a working system that's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, keeping stars stable so that life can flourish. She gestured toward the displays showing normal operations resuming throughout the Zirian system. The smart thing to do is to leave it alone, keep an eye on it to make sure nothing else goes wrong, and maybe very carefully try to understand how it works. But dismantling it or trying to reverse engineer it, that's asking for trouble. Dr. Singh nodded in agreement. She's right. We just learned that our understanding of galactic engineering is about 4 million years behind the curve. Maybe we should focus on learning instead of experimenting. Over the next several hours, the emergency response teams throughout the Zarian system stood down. Evacuation fleets returned to their home ports, emergency shelters were closed, and hundreds of billions of beings gradually learned that their universe hadn't ended after all. The scientific community, however, was just beginning to process the implications of what had been discovered. The existence of a galaxy-spanning maintenance network represented the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history, with technological implications that would take generations to fully understand. I've been thinking, Sarah said as the group prepared to leave the facility, about those failed message transmissions. The ones the facility has been sending for millions of years without getting any response. What about them? Asked Dr. Cathfar. Well, what if the reason they're not getting through isn't that the recipients are gone? What if it's just that the communication protocols have changed over millions of years? Technology evolves, communication standards change, signal formats become obsolete. Commander Zixhel's antennae perked up with interest. You think there might be other facilities out there, still operational but unable to communicate with each other. It would explain a lot, Sarah replied, why this facility kept trying to send messages instead of just shutting down the communication system. why the network was designed to operate independently, but also to coordinate with central control. Maybe we're not dealing with a dead civilization's remnants. Maybe we're dealing with a civilization that's still out there, just using technology so advanced we can't recognize it. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Somewhere in the galaxy, there might be beings whose ancestors had built a network to maintain stellar stability across thousands of systems. Beings whose technology made the most advanced galactic civilizations look like children playing with toys. That's a question for another day, Dr. Singh said diplomatically. Right now, I think we should focus on getting back to Nexus Station and figuring out how to report that a human maintenance engineer saved half the galaxy by pressing a button. Sarah laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the ancient facility. Actually, when you write up the report, maybe leave out the pressing a button part. It makes it sound too easy. Too easy, Dr. Nithros's form flickered with amusement. You solved a problem in 47 minutes that the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy couldn't solve in 25 hours. Yeah, but that's because I had different training, Sarah replied. You were approaching this like scientists trying to understand something new. I approached it like a maintenance tech trying to fix something broken. Different perspectives, different solutions. As they prepared to seal the facility and return to their shuttle, Sarah took one last look at the control room where ancient machines continued their patient work of maintaining stellar stability. The technology was incredible, but what impressed her most was the simple fact that it worked, that someone, millions of years ago, had built something designed to operate reliably across geological timescales.
You know what the real lesson is here?
She said as they headed for the exit. What's that? Asked Dr. Singh. Good engineering is good engineering, no matter how advanced the technology. Redundancy, error checking, fail-safe protocols, maintenance procedures. The fundamentals don't change. They just get more sophisticated. Behind them, the ancient facility continued its work, quietly maintaining the stability of a star system and waiting patiently for the next time its services might be needed. In the depths of space, similar facilities carried on their own patient vigils, ensuring that the fundamental conditions for life remained stable across thousands of worlds. The crisis was over, but the questions it had raised were just beginning. What other ancient systems were quietly working throughout the galaxy? Who had built them? Where had they gone? And most importantly, what would happen when the galaxy's younger civilizations advanced enough to truly understand what they had inherited? For now, though, Sarah Chen was content with the knowledge that sometimes the most complex problems had surprisingly simple solutions. All it took was the willingness to try something new, the experience to know which risks were worth taking, and the engineering sense to understand that every machine, no matter how advanced, was built by someone who wanted it to work. As their shuttle departed the artificial moon and headed back toward Nexus Station, Sarah was already thinking about her next maintenance assignment. After all, there was always something else that needed fixing. 3 weeks after the Xerian crisis, the galactic scientific community was still reeling from the implications of what had been discovered. Every major university, research institution, and government science division had requested copies of the data from the ancient facility. The revelation that a galaxy-spanning maintenance network had been operating in secret for millions of years had overturned fundamental assumptions about galactic history, stellar astronomy, and the development of advanced civilizations. Dr. Kethvar found himself at the center of a scientific revolution he never could have imagined. His daily schedule was packed with briefings, interviews, and emergency sessions of the Galactic Science Council. Everyone wanted to know more about the ancient network, and everyone had theories about what it meant for the future. The philosophical implications are staggering. Dr. Velnith from the Altarian Academy of Sciences argued during one particularly heated debate. We've been assuming that stellar stability was a natural phenomenon. Now we discover that what we thought was nature was actually technology. How much of what we consider natural galactic conditions are actually the result of ancient engineering? That's precisely the wrong question, countered Dr. Zithmar from the Crystalline Collective. The important issue is technological. We have access to engineering principles that are millions of years ahead of our current capabilities. The potential for advancement is unprecedented, and the potential for disaster is equally unprecedented, added Commander Zixel, who had become the military liaison for all matters related to the ancient network. We're dealing with technology that could reshape star systems. The security implications alone require completely new protocols. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen was dealing with her own unexpected consequences. She had returned to Proxima 7 expecting to resume her normal routine of maintaining fusion reactors and atmospheric processors. Instead, she found herself inundated with requests from research institutions throughout the galaxy, all of whom wanted to hire the maintenance engineer who saved the galaxy. "I appreciate the offer," Sarah said to Dr. Bonai Prade, Yathal from the prestigious Nexus Institute of Technology, "but I'm not really interested in becoming a research scientist. I like fixing things that are broken, not studying things that work." "But Miss Chen," Dr. Yithal's tentacles writhed with frustration. "Your approach to the Zirian crisis represents a completely new paradigm in problem solving. We need to understand your methodologies so we can apply them to other challenges." Sarah looked around her small workshop on Proxima 7. With its collection of worn tools and jury-rigged equipment that had somehow become famous throughout the galaxy. "My methodology is pretty simple. When something's broken, figure out what it's supposed to do. Then figure out why it's not doing it. Most of the time, the answer is simpler than you think." What Sarah hadn't anticipated was how her success at Zarian would change the way other species viewed humanity in general. For 50 years, humans had been the newest members of the galactic community, junior partners who were still learning how things worked on a galactic scale. Suddenly, human engineering approaches were being studied and copied throughout known space. Dr. Singh had been monitoring this shift from her position as the human liaison to the Galactic Science Council. "It's remarkable," she told Sarah during one of their regular communication calls. "Engineering schools are starting to offer courses in human problem-solving methodologies. The University of Centauri is actually creating a new department of applied human logic." "That seems a bit much," Sarah replied, looking up from the atmospheric processor she was currently repairing. "It's not like we invented troubleshooting. Every species has to fix their machines when they break. But apparently we're unusually good at it," Dr. Thomas jeered. A. Singh continued. "There's been a comprehensive study of technical problem-solving approaches across different species. Humans consistently outperform others in scenarios involving incomplete information, time pressure, and resource constraints. Probably because we're used to working with junk," Sarah laughed. "When you spend most of your time fixing things that weren't designed properly in the first place, you get good at improvisation." The real changes, however, were happening on a much larger scale. The discovery of the ancient maintenance network had prompted a galaxy-wide reassessment of technological priorities. Instead of focusing solely on developing new capabilities, many civilizations were beginning to emphasize reliability, longevity, and autonomous operation. The Altarian shipyards have completely redesigned their construction protocols, Dr. Kethvar reported during one of the weekly briefings on ancient network research. They're implementing what they call deep time engineering, designing systems to operate reliably for thousands of years with minimal maintenance. "The collective has gone even further," added Dr. Nithros. "They're developing self-maintaining cities that can adapt and repair themselves over geological timescales. But not everyone was focusing on practical applications. The discovery of the network had also triggered intensive efforts to locate and study other ancient facilities. Within a month of the Zirian incident, exploration teams were investigating anomalous objects in 17 different star systems. "We've confirmed artificial structures in at least 12 systems," reported Commander Zixel. "All appear to be maintenance facilities similar to the one at Zirian, though each has specialized functions. The facility at Rigel seems to be focused on preventing solar flares, while the one at Vega appears to regulate stellar rotation. Any luck establishing communication with them?" asked Dr. Singh. "Limited success," Zixel replied. The facilities respond to direct queries about operational status, but they don't seem capable of providing information about their builders. It's as if their historical databases were deliberately limited to technical specifications. Sarah had been invited to participate in several of these exploration missions, but she'd turned down most of the requests. "I'm not an archaeologist," she explained to yet another disappointed research team leader. "I can tell you if something's working or not, and I might be able to fix it if it's broken. But if you want to understand who built it or why, you need different expertise than mine." There was one mission, however, that caught her attention. A facility had been discovered in the Kepler system that appeared to be malfunctioning, not catastrophically like Xerion, but enough to cause noticeable irregularities in the star's behavior. "The problem started about 6 months ago," explained Dr. Mordek, the mission leader. "Dad, minor variations in stellar output, slight changes in the magnetic field. Nothing immediately dangerous, but definitely outside normal parameters." "And you want me to take a look because you think it might be a maintenance issue?" Sarah concluded. Exactly. The facility is responding to diagnostic queries, but all its self-repair systems report normal operation. We think there might be a problem that the ancient diagnostic protocols aren't designed to detect." Sarah considered the request carefully. The discovery at Xerion had made her something of a celebrity in certain circles, but it had also given her a unique perspective on the ancient network. She'd seen how sophisticated the technology was, but she'd also seen how fundamentally it followed the same engineering principles that applied to any complex system. "All right," she said finally, "I'll take a look. But I want it understood that I'm going as a maintenance consultant, not as some kind of ancient technology expert." 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself aboard a research vessel approaching the Kepler system facility. This installation was different from the one at Xerion. Instead of being hidden within an artificial moon, it was integrated directly into the structure of a large asteroid. The camouflage was just as effective, but the approach was entirely different. "The asteroid has been in a stable orbit around Kepler Prime for as long as we have observational data," reported Dr. Mordek as their ship approached the facility. "But the internal structure is clearly artificial. The power signatures alone indicate technology far beyond our current capabilities." Sarah studied the readouts from their scanners, noting several anomalies that the research team had overlooked. "When did you say the problem started?" "Approximately 6 months ago." "And when did you begin active scanning of this facility?" Dr. Mordek paused, checking his records. "About 6 months ago." Sarah looked at him with the patient expression she usually reserved for engineers who insisted that their equipment failures were impossible. "Dr. Mordek, I think your research activities might be causing the problems you're trying to solve." The next several hours were spent carefully documenting the correlation between research activities and facility malfunctions. Every time the research vessels had performed intensive scans or attempted to penetrate the facility's outer shell, the ancient systems had responded by making minor adjustments to their operational parameters. "It's like the facility thinks it's under attack," explained Dr. Yithapal, one of the younger researchers. "Every time we scan it, it shifts into a more defensive posture, which would explain why the star's magnetic field has been fluctuating," Sarah added. "The facility is trying to protect itself by making the star less predictable, harder to target with weapons." The solution turned out to be embarrassingly simple. Sarah had the research vessels withdraw to a safe distance and transmitted a standard diagnostic query to the facility using the same protocols they'd learned at Xerion. Instead of treating the ancient system as a target to be studied, she approached it as a piece of equipment that might need maintenance. "Facility status operational," came the response through the quantum communication channel. "External scanning activity detected. Implementing defensive protocols as per standard security procedures. Request permission to perform routine maintenance inspection." Sarah transmitted back. "Maintenance authorization required. Please provide credentials and specify nature of required service." Sarah looked at the assembled research team, all of whom were staring at her with expressions ranging from amazement to incredulity. "It wants to know who I am and what kind of maintenance I want to perform," she explained. But you're not authorized to perform maintenance on ancient alien technology, Dr. Mordek protested. According to the facility, I am, Sarah replied. Remember, these systems were designed to accept maintenance from any qualified organic intelligence. The authorization I used at Sirian is apparently still valid. She transmitted her credentials along with a request to perform a routine diagnostic inspection. Within minutes, the facility had opened a docking bay and provided detailed instructions for safe approach. I can't believe this is working, Dr. Mordek muttered as their shuttle entered the ancient facility. It's working because we're finally treating the system the way it was designed to be treated, Sarah replied. These facilities aren't archaeological artifacts. They're active infrastructure. They expect to be maintained, inspected, and occasionally repaired. The interior of the Kepler facility was similar to Zirian in its fundamental design, but had clearly been optimized for different functions. Where Zirian had focused on stellar magnetic field management, Kepler specialized in fine-tuning fusion reaction rates to prevent the gradual accumulation of heavy elements that could eventually destabilize the star. Fascinating, Dr. Yithpol whispered as they walked through chambers filled with equipment that seemed to operate on principles of physics that their science hadn't yet discovered. The precision required to maintain stellar chemistry over millions of years. Sarah was examining the facility's status displays, which showed normal operation except for the defensive protocols that had been triggered by the research activities. The good news is that there's nothing wrong with the facility. The bad news is that we've been unintentionally harassing it for 6 months. Can you convince it to stand down the defensive protocols? Asked Dr. Mordek. Already done, Sarah replied, pointing to a display showing the system returning to normal operational parameters. I just had to explain that the scanning activities were scientific research, not military reconnaissance. As the Kepler star returned to normal behavior, the research team found themselves grappling with a new understanding of their relationship with the ancient network. These weren't dead archaeological sites to be studied. They were active systems that had been maintaining galactic infrastructure for millions of years.
We need to completely revise our research protocols,
Dr. Orta concluded as they prepared to leave the facility. Instead of trying to study these systems from the outside, we need to learn to work with them as operational infrastructure. The implications go far beyond research, added Dr. Yithpol. If we can establish proper communication and cooperation with this network, we could learn more about stellar engineering in a few years than we've learned in centuries of independent research. Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on something else entirely. During their time in the facility, she'd noticed communications equipment similar to what they'd seen at Zirian, systems that were still trying to send messages to destinations throughout the galaxy. There's something I want to try, she said, approaching one of the communication interfaces. Instead of trying to understand the alien technology, Sarah simply connected her diagnostic scanner to the system and began transmitting a standard maintenance query on multiple frequencies. If her theory was correct, there should be other facilities throughout the galaxy that were capable of responding. Within minutes, her scanner began receiving replies, brief, standardized responses that indicated operational status, but responses nonetheless. I'm getting acknowledgments from 47 different systems, Sarah announced, her voice filled with excitement. The network isn't dead. It's been waiting for someone to use the right communication protocols. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. The ancient maintenance network wasn't just a collection of isolated facilities. It was still an integrated system, capable of coordination and information sharing across galactic distances. Sarah, Dr. Mordek said slowly, I think you've just established the first communication with a galactic civilization that's been operating continuously for over 4 million years. Sarah looked at her scanner, displaying responses from dozens of ancient facilities across known space, and realized that her simple approach to maintenance troubleshooting had just opened the door to what might be the most significant diplomatic contact in galactic history. Well, she said with characteristic understatement, I guess we're going to need a bigger toolkit. 6 months after Sarah Chen had first established communication with the ancient network, the galaxy was experiencing the most profound technological and philosophical revolution in recorded history. What had started as a simple maintenance call had evolved into ongoing dialogue with a civilization that predated every known species by millions of years. The breakthrough had come when Sarah realized that the network's communication protocols were designed around practical maintenance needs rather than abstract scientific inquiry. Instead of asking complex questions about history or technology, she had focused on operational status reports and maintenance schedules. The ancient systems had responded enthusiastically, apparently delighted to finally have someone who spoke their language. Current network status: 2,847 facilities operational across 1,200 systems. Read the latest report that Sarah had compiled from her ongoing communications with the network. Average operational efficiency, 97.3%. 23 facilities currently requiring routine maintenance. 7 facilities showing minor degradation requiring attention within next 500 years. Dr. Kethvar studied the report with an expression that had become familiar over the past months, the look of someone whose understanding of the universe had been fundamentally altered. 500 years qualifies as urgent maintenance in their operational timeline? That's actually an emergency alert, Sarah replied, not looking up from her latest batch of communications. Normal maintenance cycles are scheduled in increments of 10,000 years. When they say something needs attention in 500 years, they mean it's practically broken by their standards. The scale of the network continued to astound everyone involved in the project. The 2,847 facilities represented the largest infrastructure project in galactic history, spanning hundreds of light years and incorporating technology that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were only beginning to comprehend. The energy requirements alone are staggering, Dr. Nithros had calculated during one of their regular briefings. The network draws power from stellar cores, quantum vacuum fluctuations, and what appears to be direct conversion of dark matter. They're operating on an energy budget that exceeds the combined output of every civilization in known space. But it wasn't just the scale that was revolutionary, it was the approach. As Sarah had discovered, the network represented a fundamentally different philosophy of civilization development. Instead of focusing on expansion, exploration, or even survival, the builders had prioritized stability and maintenance on geological timescales. They weren't just advanced, Sarah explained to a gathering of galactic leaders who had assembled to discuss the implications of contact with the network. They were thinking ahead, way ahead. They built infrastructure designed to maintain stellar stability for billions of years, ensuring that life could evolve and develop throughout the galaxy. But where are they now? Asked Chancellor Vexnell from the Central Worlds Alliance. If they built all this, why aren't they still running it? Sarah pulled up a communication log that had taken her weeks to decode. According to the network, they're still around. They just operate on a different time scale than we do. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The idea that the builders of the network might still exist somewhere in the galaxy was both thrilling and terrifying. The network refers to them as the architects, Sarah continued. Near as I can tell, they've evolved beyond the need for physical infrastructure. The network was their final gift to younger civilizations, a way to ensure that the galaxy would remain stable and habitable for millions of years. A gift that's been running autonomously for 4 million years, added Dr. Singh, who had become Sarah's primary liaison with the broader scientific community. With occasional maintenance calls, Sarah added with a grin. The practical implications of working with the network had already begun to transform galactic civilization. The first major breakthrough had come when Sarah had asked the network about stellar engineering techniques. Instead of providing theoretical explanations, the ancient systems had offered hands-on training. Facility 2,847 requests permission to demonstrate solar magnetic field adjustment procedures had been the network's response. Training protocols available for organic intelligence education. Estimated duration, 6 months standard time. 3 human engineers and 2 Altairian physicists had volunteered for the program. They were currently at an ancient facility in the Vega system, learning stellar engineering from teachers whose expertise spanned millions of years of practical experience. The reports from the training program are incredible, Dr. Kethvar said, reviewing the latest transmission from Vega. The trainees are learning to make precise adjustments to stellar magnetic fields using technology that we can barely comprehend. But the network's teaching methods are surprisingly practical. They focus on understanding what effects you want to achieve rather than the underlying physics. That's a very human approach, Sarah observed. Learn what works, worry about why it works. Later, the training programs had been so successful that requests were pouring in from across the galaxy. Every major civilization wanted to send representatives to learn from the ancient network. But the network was selective about its students, requiring what it called maintenance aptitude before accepting anyone for training. Apparently, not everyone has the right mindset for working with technology designed to operate across geological timescales, Sarah explained to the latest group of disappointed applicants. The network's selection criteria aren't about intelligence or technical knowledge. They're about patience, attention to detail, and what they call deep system intuition. Interestingly, humans seem to have unusually high acceptance rates for the training programs. Out of every 100 human applicants, about 30 were accepted. For other species, the acceptance rate was typically less than 5%. It's probably because we're used to working with unreliable technology, Sarah speculated. When you spend your whole life fixing things that weren't designed to work properly, you develop a different approach to problem solving. But the most significant development had occurred just 2 weeks earlier, when Sarah had made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about the network. I was reviewing the maintenance schedules for the facilities in Sector 12, Sarah explained to the emergency session of the Galactic Science Council. And I noticed something odd. 3 facilities had synchronized their maintenance cycles to begin on the same date, which didn't make sense from an operational standpoint. What was significant about the date? Asked Dr. P. Kethvar. It was today. Well, specifically, it was the date when I first established communication with the network at Sirian. The room erupted in confused discussion from a dozen different species. You're saying the network scheduled maintenance activities based on when you would contact them? Dr. Neithrose's energy form pulsed rapidly with excitement. I'm saying the network has been waiting for us, Sarah replied. All of us. The entire galactic community. They've been maintaining stellar stability for millions of years, but they were always planning for the day when younger civilizations would advance enough to work with them as partners rather than beneficiaries. She pulled up a communication log that still sent chills down her spine. I asked the network why they had waited so long to make contact. Here's what they told me. Infrastructure maintenance requires eventual transition to local management. Architect-built systems designed for educational transfer when recipient civilizations achieve maintenance readiness. Transfer protocols initiated upon first successful diagnostic intervention by qualified organic maintenance personnel. They were waiting for someone like you, Dr. Singh said softly. Someone who would approach their technology as infrastructure to be maintained rather than artifacts to be studied. Not someone like me, specifically, Sarah corrected. Someone from our generation of galactic civilization. They were waiting for us to develop enough to become partners in maintaining galactic infrastructure. The implications were staggering. For millions of years, the ancient network had been more than just maintaining stellar stability. It had been preparing for the day when it could begin training younger civilizations to take over its responsibilities. The network has been running educational assessments on every species in the galaxy for the past 1,000 years, Sarah continued, monitoring our technological development, our approaches to problem solving, our capacity for thinking on long time scales. And we passed the test? Asked Chancellor Vexenau. Apparently. But here's the thing. It wasn't a test we could study for or prepare for. They were looking for civilizations that had developed the right combination of technical capability cooperative instincts, and what they call maintenance ethics.
Meaning?
Dr. Kethvar prompted. Meaning species that build things to last, take responsibility for maintaining infrastructure, and think about the long-term consequences of their actions. Over the following hours, Sarah shared the full scope of what she had learned from the network. The ancient systems weren't just maintaining stellar stability. They were gradually transferring knowledge and responsibility to the galaxy's younger civilizations, preparing for the eventual day when they would no longer be needed. The transition process is designed to take about 1,000 years, Sarah explained. Long enough for multiple species to master the technology and establish their own maintenance protocols. Short enough that the original network can oversee the transfer. 1,000 years to learn to maintain stellar engineering across the entire galaxy, Dr. Nithros observed. That seems ambitious. The network doesn't think so, Sarah replied. According to their calculations, our current rate of learning suggests we'll be ready for full autonomy in approximately 800 years. They're actually ahead of schedule. The final revelation came when Sarah shared the network's long-term plans for galactic development. The stellar maintenance system was apparently just the first phase of a much larger project. Once we've mastered stellar engineering, the network wants to begin teaching us planetary climate management, galactic ecosystem preservation, and what they call, they've been preparing the galaxy not just for life, but for the eventual emergence of what they call successor civilizations.
Civilizations like us?
Asked Dr. Singh. Civilizations like what we could become, Sarah corrected. The network's builders didn't just maintain stellar stability for millions of years as a gift to random species that might evolve. They did it as an investment in the future of intelligence in the galaxy. As the session concluded, the assembled leaders found themselves grappling with a fundamental shift in their understanding of their place in the galaxy. They weren't just beneficiaries of ancient technology. They were the inheritors of a legacy that spanned millions of years and the intended stewards of galactic infrastructure that would operate for millions more. So what happens now? Asked Chancellor Vexnall. Sarah looked around the room at the representatives of dozens of species, all of whom were struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what they had inherited. Now we learn, she said simply. We learn to maintain stars, to preserve ecosystems, to think in geological timescales. We learn to be worthy successors to the civilization that made all of this possible. And after that, Sarah smiled, thinking about the ancient facilities that continued their patient work across the galaxy, gradually transferring the knowledge of millions of years to civilizations that were just beginning to understand. After that, we become the ones who prepare the galaxy for whatever comes next. We become the architects for the civilizations that haven't evolved yet. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, each returning to their homeworlds with news that would reshape their civilization's understanding of their place in the cosmos, Sarah remained behind, reviewing the latest communication from the network. Maintenance training program expanding to include 47 new species. The message read, Galactic infrastructure transition proceeding ahead of schedule. Successor civilization integration successful. The architects express satisfaction with current development trajectory. Sarah closed the communication log and gathered her tools. Somewhere in the galaxy, ancient facilities continued their work of maintaining stellar stability, gradually transferring their knowledge to civilizations that were learning to think beyond their own lifespans. And somewhere else, in ways that defied current understanding, the architects watched and waited, satisfied that their 4-million-year plan was finally entering its next phase. She had started this journey as a maintenance engineer, trying to fix a broken star. With Trust Teddy, she was ending it as humanity's representative in the greatest infrastructure project in galactic history. Not bad for someone whose main qualification was knowing which end of a wrench to hold. As Sarah headed back to her workshop, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from fixing atmospheric processors on a backwater colony to communicating with a galaxy-spanning civilization. The tools in her kit hadn't changed much. She still carried the same worn multi-tool and diagnostic scanner that had served her well for 20 years, but her perspective on what those tools could accomplish had expanded beyond anything she could have imagined. The ancient network had taught her that good engineering wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about building things that would continue working long after their creators were gone. It was about taking responsibility not just for immediate problems, but for the long-term stability of the systems that made life possible. As she settled down to work on her latest project, a collaboration with the network to develop new stellar maintenance protocols that could be operated by younger civilizations, Sarah realized that she had finally found a job worthy of her skills. It was going to take 1,000 years to complete, but that just meant she'd better get started. After all, there was always something else that needed fixing. After spending millions, aliens failed. A human solved the issue in 1 hour. HFY Stories.